Dead no more. Patient Zer0 Chapter 13. Someone is going to die. Wow, I exclaimed. You guys did an outstanding job. Thank you so much. Now let's get busy and start saving people. It seems like so long ago since I made that statement. But it had only been a few months. People are starting to file in as we have invited in entire groups who were willing to acquiesce to our rules. Even though the plant and the armory were out in the open, we still maintained the secrecy of the bunker. We expanded the council and included elections and representation from the other two locations. The meeting of the council rotated to each location so as not to play favoritism. As time passed and our communities grew, I began to get a little worried. Even though we're in the middle of the apocalypse, everyone seems to be a little too at ease. We're having barbecues and dances. A couple of the raiders even salvaged some films and projectors from a movie theater and changed one of the barracks at the armory into a theater. We have committed an unforgivable sin. We've committed the sin of complacency. We are getting fat and comfortable. Tim, Vaughn and Fred have come up with some innovative ideas, like penning the DCs in front of the armory to give it the illusion that it is overrun. Vaughn also suggested that we attach wires to some of the DCs near the plant to force them to walk in a circle as a deterrent. All of the DCs had their teeth and fingertips removed. But the bulk of our community is not ready for what I feel is coming. And it seems that Dee is becoming a little more Pollyanna every day. She is adamant about preventing us from raising and training a pseudo-army. It's even beginning to affect the relationship between her and Andre. Babe, I know you have an issue with violence and that we should all just get along, but that's not the world we live in, said Andre. You weren't there, so you didn't see the shape Marie was in after that Otto von douchebag dude took her, or with what happened to Ellen. What if Jacob and his crew should come back? There are some evil and depraved human beings out there now with no law to rein them in. I'm not naive, Andre, but do we have to become the evil we are fighting against? Pleaded Diana. Guns beget violence and violence begets arrogance and arrogance begets superiority and the whole damn thing starts over again. Look, we're not conquerors, said Andre. We're not looking to take what others have. We are only offering an alliance or an offer to join us, as well as protect our way of life. But what about those folks who turned you down the other day? She asked. Those hillbilly idiots pulled guns on us and tried to take our truck. We tried to leave peacefully, but they attacked us, he said. They attack us, we attack them and it always ends the same, with someone dead, she replied. So are you suggesting that we don't defend ourselves? He asked. No, I'd die if anything happened to you. I just want the killing to stop, she said. As I moved between the bunker, the armory and the plant, I saw laughter, I saw people sitting around lazily, but I saw no training. The twins are making out in the shooting range with Aisha and Regina. Fred and Ronnie are in the motor pool attempting to restore a hot rod that Rodriguez found. And Rodriguez, with Tease and a few of the raiders' help, is throwing his daughter, Elsa, a quinceañera. I mean, one part of me is glad that we are getting as close to normal as possible, but it feels like the calm before the storm. I continue on to one of the makeshift dojos set up in the plant and I see Em and Joshua training their hearts out. They get it, but the others seem to be treating this like a day at the spa. You two seem to be going at it pretty fierce, I said. He's good, but I'm better, said Em. And with that distraction, Joshua swept her legs from under her and slapped on an arm bar. Hey, no fair, Doc distracted me, she protested as she tapped out. Joshua stood and he bowed to me and then to Em and said, as my sensei says constantly, we must be ready for any and all eventualities. My heart swelled with pride. If I may be excused, I promised Jamie I would go over some holds with her, he said as he grinned. We bowed and he ran off. I think you are possibly passing some of your flirtatious traits onto him, said Em as she slapped my bottom and squeezed it. Only the good ones, I said as I winked at her. Em joined me as I continued to the plant. Jason, Ellen and Marie were the first ones who decided to take up residence here with Ernesti and Madison. Where was Ernesti? Where else would he be but with Madison? Most in our group thinks that Ernesti has lost it. But I know he stays with Madison out of obligation. He feels guilty that he was unable to protect her and that she turned. Madison, I really believe I have an opportunity to return to the living again, he said as he caressed her face and she looked on with a vacant look in her eyes. Know that I will never forget you and will always remember the promise. Life continues as long as one lives. He pulled out his blade and sunk it into Madison's temple. He turned toward us and said, it's done. He picked up Madison's body and carried it outside. He dug a shallow grave that he insisted that he alone dig, said a few quiet words and buried his friend, with only Em and I as witnesses. Ernesti returned inside and walked up to Marie and gently took her hand and said, "I will protect you. I guess it is spring and love is in the air." I needed to get out of the confines of the shelters. I asked M to accompany me as I checked on a few of the outposts. We drove to the outpost where we first ran into M, Joshua and the Rodriguez. The food stores hadn't been restocked and the weapons had been taken. We replaced the supplies and we continued to the outpost where we ran into Jamie and Ronnie. There was a couple there. The woman was cradling the head of the man. She said something that we couldn't make out and she shot him in the head. She then pointed the gun at her own head and pulled the trigger. They gave up. I looked at M and she looked at me and we both turned to leave. "M, I'm worried," I said. "This is the world we now live in, but everyone at our settlements are living in a fool's paradise." "They're just happy," she said. "They're getting soft," I replied. "How do I get them to understand that this could all end tomorrow, that none of us are really safe? We have to remain vigilant at all times, but we've gotten too comfortable." Out conversation was interrupted by a DC, then 2, 3, it was a damned herd. It was as if the fates were trying to prove my point. M and I were hacking our way back to the car. My heart skipped a beat when M and I got separated and she became surrounded by DCs. I struggled against the DCs near me and pushed towards her direction. M was gone. My heart was beginning to sink and I grew furious. I was angry enough to kill them all. These monsters had taken 2 women from me and there wasn't anything I could do about it. But just then, it happened. I could no longer see her, but the sound of her blade could still be heard cleaving bone and tissue. "M, keep heading towards the car," I shouted. "I'll meet you there, lover," she shouted back. But that was when I saw it. It wasn't a herd, it was a horde. There were thousands of DCs in the valley and they were all headed towards the bunker. This one makes the last walk through look like a picnic. This is Dock to the bunker. Dock to the bunker. A horde is on its way through the area. Repeat, a horde is on its way through the area, I screamed into the walkie-talkie. This is Myrna Rodriguez on comm duty. Say again, said Myrna. Myrna, this is Doc. A horde of approximately 20,000 DCs are headed that way. I repeated. Dios mío. The ranking council member here is Mr. T. I'll let him know rapidamente. She replied. As we made it back to the car, it was about to be overrun. We got into the car just in the nick of time. We hit 2 DCs as we peeled out. In all the time I've known M, this is the first time she has looked frightened. But who can blame her? When the herd walked through the bunker the first time, 2 people were hurt, and Fred lost his hand. God only knows what will happen this time. How in the hell will they react to this after so much time of lazing around? Due to the severity of the situation, we broke protocol and drove right through the gate of the farm and right up to the barn. We dispatched the DCs still there. Myrna was on the comm with both the armory and the plant. They had already began to evacuate the non-fighters out of the bunker and relocated them to the plant. The raiders, whose ranks were recently increased by Henry, Ernesti and Jason were all dressed in their riot gear and armed and ready to go at the bunker. Vaughn and T were there as well. We got everyone out, said T. Vaughn here thinks he has some way to guide the horde. Vaughn led us all to the conference room. He then wheeled in a whiteboard that we found on one of the runs. We know that the DCs follow sound and rapidly moving targets. Well, I think if we use some of the Vaughn bombs, we can force the DCs to follow both the alarms and the explosions, he said. The problem will come when trying to get close enough to deploy the devices. I was hoping we could use the T-shirt cannons that Rodriguez found, but the Vaughn bombs won't fit in them. So the only remaining option is to throw them. If we all use riot gear and stay a good distance from them and throw the Vaughn bombs in their midst, we might be able to guide them to an area away from our settlements, I said. Look, dead heroes won't do any of us any good. Keep your head on a swivel and stay alert. Don't let yourself get surrounded and overwhelmed. You can be overwhelmed and underwhelmed, but can anyone just be whelmed? Asked T. His attempts to break the tension with levity was obvious. We all laughed with nervousness mixed in. Today, I'm shooting for whelmed. Exclaimed T. Doc, come in. Doc, do you read me? Over, said Leon on the walkie-talkie. Fred got the tank running. We're ready to show these bastards not to fuck with us, sir. I informed Leon, Fred and Tim of our plan to try and herd the horde using the Vaughn bombs. Leon would only fire if he was certain there was no one in the area. Andre, Brian and Henry took the .50 caliber machine gun mounted truck and took point. They were followed by Ernesti and Jason in a pickup with Robert. Ricky drove. Joshua and T.I. brought up the rear with Gerald and Rodriguez. We would rendezvous with Leon out by the crest of the valley provided they hadn't progressed that far. Leon wanted to just run them over with the tank, but I feared the treads would become clogged with DC parts and dissuaded him from that course. I tasked M&D with shoring up the defenses for the armory and the plant as we were all out in the field to prevent disaster. I tried to prepare the group for what lied ahead. Even though all of us had experienced a herd or two before, I think this horde was a first for all of us. The sheer magnitude of the undead was staggering. It was almost beautiful, that is until you realized that they were coming to devour you. I need everyone to steel yourselves today. I don't want anyone to take any unnecessary risks. Let's do this by the numbers but remain safe above all else, I said to them. If you get separated from the group, do not, I repeat, do not honk your horn, as that will only draw attention to your vehicle. Get on the radio. Everyone should have extra batteries as well. As Andre, Brian and Henry pulled up in front of the horde, they began to lay down hundreds of DCs and began to create an artificial wall that caused them to change course slightly. Henry, what's the ammo situation like? Asked Andre over the comm. We have approximately 300,000 rounds back here. We should be fine, responded Henry. Okay, we're going to try and continue to guide them with stacking bodies, said Andre. I'll do my best to keep them away from the truck, said Brian. Robert followed behind them as Ernesti and Jason shot those who broke through the wall and caused a new stack. Doc, they're trying to push through the wall, said Jason. That's because you stopped and gave them a target. Keep it moving, and if you begin to run out of fuel, break away and head to the plant, refuel and return. Leave it a quarter of a tank of fuel. Ricky, I want you to pull away at half a tank to ensure that we always have someone on the line. If worst comes to worst, we have Leon in the tank, I said. The radio chatter was interrupted as Ricky got stuck attempting to drive over the fallen DCs. Dad, we're stuck, said Joshua. What's the plan? We're on our way, son, I shouted. Andre circled back to help us as we repelled the advancing DCs. Andre, continue on course with the objective. We have to guide these DCs away from our settlements, I shouted. But Doc, we have to save our people, yelled Andre. You have your orders, mister. Disobey them again, and you'll deal with me, I shouted. Again, Andre turned his vehicle around and returned to the task at hand as he, Brian and Henry were curbing the DCs by creating walls of fallen DCs. Joshua, T, Gerald and I shot as many DCs as we were able, creating a small perimeter of DC bodies as they fell, but they continued to move forward. Even though we were diligent in killing as many DCs as possible, a few got through. Joshua and T began to engage them in hand-to-hand as they reached over the sides of the pickup. Joshua moved as quickly as a flash as he dispatched the encroaching DCs before T could even pick up his hiking pick hammers. Damn, boy, you're making me look bad. But I've never been so glad to look so bad, said T. I apologize, Mr. T, that was not my intention, said Joshua. Mr. T, I pity the fool, laughed T. Joshua looked at him strangely as he didn't understand the reference. You call me Uncle T? T demanded. They smiled at each other as a DC reached in and grabbed Joshua by his arm. Everything moved in slow motion, as they tugged back and forth. The DC attempting to secure the bite and Joshua attempting to break free. The DC was pulling his arm to his mouth. But I already had the shot lined up. Boom. The DC's head exploded all over Joshua. He wrestled his arm free of the grip and looked in my direction and gave me the thumbs up. As the bodies continued to fall against the truck driven by Ricky, the sheer weight of the corpses pushed the truck forward and free. Ricky continued on to the plant to refuel while the rest of us began to toss the Von bombs into the midst of the DCs. You could hear the faint ringing of the bell of the alarm over the constant moaning and hissing, and then boom. Shrapnel would lay down about 15 to 20 DCs, and those just outside of the blast radius would move to the blast area, towards the sound and the burning flesh. Again, another Von bomb, then 2, now 3, 4, 5 all in the air, then the ringing, then the boom. The Von bombs landed far enough within the DC wall to maintain its integrity, but enough to lay down a floor of DCs adjacent to the wall. Again, Andre circled around the front of the horde and it was actually turning. As they began to head into a nearby quarry, I instructed the raiders to continue to herd them into that direction. With only one way out, we could create a rock slide from the mountain to block the road out of the quarry and trap the horde inside. We began to throw the Von bombs into the quarry and the DCs began walking off of the cliff and right into the quarry. The wall of DC bodies lead them right to the quarry. As a few straggling DCs began to diverge from the path leading to the quarry, Robert ran through a herd. Some of the body parts from the DCs got stuck in the undercarriage of the truck. Robert lost control as the truck crashed into a tree overlooking the quarry. The force of the truck striking the tree caused it to uproot and lean over the quarry. The truck was halfway up the tree. If the soil on those roots gives way, the truck and those 3 men will fall head first into a pit of thousands of DCs. How long before you get back here, Ricky? I yelled into the walkie-talkie. We're about 10 minutes out, Doc, Ricky responded. Robert was unconscious and Jason and Ernesti were doing all they could to fight off the remainder of the herd. Rodriguez, see if you can get us over there to lend a hand. Andre, keep pushing those bastards into the quarry. Leon, stand at the ready. When Andre gives you the signal, blast the mountainside to pin them in. Ernesti and Jason, keep fighting. We're on our way. You two have to protect Robert. I yelled into the walkie. As Rodriguez advanced on the herd, Gerald and I picked off as many DCs as we could. You could tell that the fighting was beginning to take a physical toll on Ernesti and Jason. But they didn't stop. It was as if a bloodlust overcame them. They shot and bashed DC after DC. The DCs were beginning to advance against the truck and the tree was beginning to lower slowly into the quarry. The roots of the tree were almost free. As we pulled up to the truck, Gerald and I jumped into the back of their truck trying to create a counterweight. Rodriguez moved to get Robert out of their truck and into ours. We were then beset by more DCs determined to make a meal of us. Rodriguez kicked one away as he carried Robert to the truck. 2 more were upon him as Jason split one skull with his machete. The DCs were now clawing at Ernesti's hooded poncho. He struggled to free himself from the death grip of the DC. Rodriguez had Robert over his shoulder pressed against the truck while fighting off advancing DCs. Ernesti was in a silent tug of war with now 3 DCs who were clawing at his poncho to get at him. Gerald, Jason and I were fighting and shooting, but they never seemed to end. We fought them back over the cliff's edge and into the quarry. Ernesti finally freed himself as he kicked the lead DC into the other 2 as they stumbled over the cliff. Just then, it was as if there was a last-ditch effort by the DCs as some were surging from the quarry. And as we were steeling ourselves for their advance, you could hear it, rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat. It was Andre, Brian and Henry. The machine gun made short work of the DCs as their heads exploded. We fought while trying not to become victims of friendly fire. We herded them together and Henry took them down. As what we thought was the last DC to fall, we all kind of just fell against the truck as Andre radioed Leon to level the mountain. He fired the shells, boom, 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 and they hit hard and rained dirt, soil and debris over the entire quarry. But our objective was completed. As I stood up against the truck, a hand belonging to a DC's top half of his torso grabbed my foot from under the truck. It bit me hard on the ankle. As this was happening, Ricky was speeding to our location and before he could come to a full stop, Joshua leapt from the back of the truck and crushed the DC's head with his staff in one fluid motion. They all looked at me as if I were already dead. T and Joshua were visibly upset and though there was a constant moan and hiss of the DCs in the quarry, there was a noticeable silence as we all stood there. Heads were lowered and they shook. Andre, Brian and Henry pulled up and Ernesti informed them of what had just happened. Fuck. T's yell echoed over hissing in the quarry. This isn't fair, said Joshua. It's not supposed to end like this for you. You just became my dad. I think I even saw a tear or 2 well up in a few eyes. As I pulled up my pant leg to reveal where the DC bit me, a large collective sigh fell from everyone's lips. Thank God for Marine Corps boot leather. I shot Joshua the thumbs up. I checked on Robert and he was slowly regaining consciousness. We climbed into the trucks and headed back to the bunker. We showered and changed and then headed to the plant. As we pulled up to the towers, we noticed they weren't manned. There was no sign of an attack and the doors were shut. As we made our way inside, everyone was gathered in the middle of the plant floor. D approached me and said, Marvin, I'm so sorry. Why is everyone so somber? It only bit boot leather. I'll be fine, I said thinking they had heard about my ordeal with the DC. I then saw M. Her eyes were puffy from crying and she was visibly shaken and upset. I didn't know what else to do, she said as she cried. I didn't know what else to do. In the middle of the floor were 3 bodies covered with sheets. Marv, I'm so sorry, but I didn't know what else to do. She said again as Dee put her arm around her. I was confused and dumbfounded. Everyone's eyes were on me and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. I wasn't bit. I was going to live. My mama would say you all look as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs, I said as I looked around. Again, everyone looked away to avoid my gaze. Hey, where is my mom anyway? I asked. Again, they all looked away. During the excitement, she decided to go lie down in one of the offices, said Dee. I think it was a heart attack and she passed in her sleep. When she reanimated, she bit Tim's wife, Nancy, and she bit Marie. They're all gone.